you listened it correctly, the opportunities. Because you are an engineer, you are a technocrat, you have ideas, you can contribute to the open world, like you have some sort of skills. Like but these skills should be like passed on to the company or the startup that are looking for it. So by contributing into the open source, you are letting yourself to upskill yourself. You are letting to get sort of opportunities for the lifetime career. And of course, like at the end, if you're getting all these things, so you are getting a sort of satisfaction in your mind for your life. Like what else can be done? So let me get a brief of it. Like if you are contributing in a open source, and people are and companies are also looking for those people like who are contributing into open source, like what sort of feature they are developing, what sort of skills that person has, or like what they can do it. So companies likely to get hired these sort of people from the open source itself, and the percentage of getting hired from these companies in open source is too much high. So one should go for open source and apply this skills into it. So Delushi, so like I have one more question into it. Like Takir has said that, like me, has said that, hey, what is open source has been covered, like what are the opportunity that we can get from the open source. But you must be having a question like, hey, Takir, like how to get into it? You have said a lot of things, like you have given a lot of speech into it. So how do I get into it? My friend, there's certain answer for it. You just need a programming language, which can be any of the things, and a way to do it because you need a lot of hard work to do it. So yeah, over to you, Vidushi.
Yes, so I mean, it does look, it's like a process to get into open source, and I would like to tell everyone that look into the company's code base first. Identify companies that really interest you, or programming languages which have been used by a few companies, and then try to understand their code base, try to look at their GitHub issues, and then fork the repository, work onto it, talk to the maintainers of the repository of what they're actually looking for as a change in the issue. So, and then all you have to do is persistence and determination for it to actually be absorbed into the organization that you have been committing for. So it's pretty simple. It's just like you really don't have to take care about all the other code base, but it's just that you're working on a part of it. But that does not mean that you're working on part of it and you break the rest. You have to take care that it's an organization and you have to maintain their code base. So it's not really difficult, but once you get into it, you'll get a hang of it. Honestly, for me, I started getting into open source with Microsoft's VS Code repository, and that was my first ever contribution into open source. And since then, I've been contributing into open source ever since. It was a little overwhelming in the start, but it gets better as it goes ahead and ahead. Next slide. So I'll tell you what's next. Now that you've learned how to contribute and you know what open source is, so what you can do is now look into programs, or like there are seasons that conduct open source events. Like you can actually contribute into open source as being a part of that event. For example, there's Google Summer of Code, so there are multiple organizations that come in with their open source repositories. You can choose which organization you want to contribute to, you can propose what you want to contribute. And similarly with Hacktoberfest, you can actually, there are multiple organizations that come there, and all that you have to do is just make PRs, and your PR should get accepted. It's not like a rat race, but it's how efficiently you handle the code. And similarly for girls, there's also Girls Script Summer of Code, and there's Microsoft Open, there's Outreachy. So there are multiple places where you can get started with open source. And to do that, you might just if you open a repository and you see thousands of issues lying there, it might just get overwhelming as to which issue should you specifically work on. To understand this, there are tags in GitHub, and for that, what you can use is there's going to be the first timers only tag or a beginner friendly tag, which says that People who are just getting into open source can solve this issue. And if you
Exactly.
need more help, what you can do is you can talk to the maintainers in the of the repository. You can comment in the same issue to get a better understanding of what does the organization want. And when you do that, they'll actually get back to you and they'll explain what are they expecting out of it, and then you can make those changes and come it back into the repository. And there's also going to be open source Friday, there's contributor ninja, there's 24 pull requests. All of these are going to help you to realize which issue can you actually work upon, because it can be quite a task to be able to see these see the number of issues and then pick which one's best for you. So this is like this these are the seasons and the tags that can help you to get into open source. So if anyone has any doubts or like one specific
Please let
guide,
us know,
yeah,
is there any doubt till yet, and we will get into the how to part because that's the most interesting part because one can give the speech, but yes, getting into how to part is the main thing.
yeah,
Is there? Yeah, yes.
there are no questions on Slido as of now.
Yeah. So, hey everyone, I'm okay here. So, I'm getting into now the part of how to. So, like you have told us a lot of information about open source, like how to get into it, like why so it is important, like what will be the benefit we shall be getting into after getting into the open source. Like the basic question is like how to. So let us start into it. So the basic answer I'll chat is Git. Yes, a Git. An interconnection. Yes, you have heard it very correct. Because Git is a version control system and all the software being developed over the overseas on open source software or web apps or the introductory or README contains a version. So we have to control the version. So we are using Git. The fastest serving version control is the Git itself. After that, I'm going to push into you GitHub.com. I've logged in. If you do not have any sort of account, you can create it. It's free. Nothing else like you create on Meta or Instagram. Doesn't matter. So you get onto the platform like GitHub, and you have to look for the open source project where you can contribute into and let the people know that you know all these things and these features can be embedded into the real-time project. So what you will do, get to do it like any issues folder. You get nothing over here. Before getting into it, let me tell you that I have certain pull requested on site for working on some of the website still going on and it's not published yet. So yeah, couldn't get that. So you are getting into the issues part and you will search the open source project over here. I have some more tricks to get the open source project, but that's a basic one. I'm telling you on the most basic part. So yeah, listen it carefully and have a look at it. You get into this part and you're looking for any open source project. So what you will type? I like this. Hey, okay, what you have written this? Like this sort of Jimwell and JSON type of thing. Like I'm scared now. So don't be scared now. Like let me explain you what is it all about. What does it mean? Get a look into it. It's open. Like the repository or the pull request or the issues are still open. Like you can still contribute into it. You still have a chance to get involved into the contribution. Is issue? Yes, of course. I want an issue. Issue is certain type of problem which can be solved, like removing the button or like removing the background from the web page or removing any sort of feature from the software. It can be solved as an issue. We'll get into it more. Label. The most interesting part is label, from where each and everyone start into the open source contribution. It's written that good first issue. What does it mean? Like, what does it mean? Like good first issue. Good first issue is like for the beginner purposes, like people like me. Like we want to search for the very beginner purposes and like for the project which are very, very beginner level. So we will look into the good first issues and we'll look for like these projects have good first issue and we will contribute into it. Then we will look for any sort of language like JavaScript, HTML, C++, whatever you want, you can type into it. Doesn't matter at all. I'll get a enter into it. And Hooray, we have got a lot of things over here, like bunch of things that can be embedded into. Let me explain and summarize all these things at a once, like what you can all do over this page. Isn't this vibrant too much? Like so much of color, text, looking like a programmer's thing and all. So cool. Yeah. See, over here, there is one issue over here, which says that concourse documentation enhancement. Typically means that typically means that there is a documentation over here. Documentation which tells you about the project, what's going on in the project, and what sort of enhancement can be done in the README on the documentation type. So well, we can look into it and read the summary of it, like what is it all about, what the contributor earlier has said that, and what the publisher has said to do into this repository. From the assumption, we can see that there is some sort of GH application or GH API that means GitHub or CLI part, which you can move into it. And this seems some sort of to me. So before getting into it, I'll see something like issues and pull request. This is an additional hack which let you to know that which types of pull request or the issues which have been solved by the people itself from before getting you into it. So what you can see is that people have enhanced all these features, all these perks, all this improvement into this software or the repository or what you can say. I'll get back more into it. And now the language part. I've just said that, hey, Toki, you have used JavaScript and I'm not getting any sort of JavaScript file, like what to do into this. There's certain problem. I'll say no problem at all. Here's legal work. They sort of work for it. And the language uses Ruby. If I'm aware of Ruby, if I am aware of Ruby and know how to solve these problem issues which have been introduced into it, like UI update, improvement of alignment, which is being used by the UI of Ruby, so I can use into it. So I think the problem till yet. So any problem till yet, Vidushik, could you please let me know from the chat? Like people aren't confused. This is a major concern over here. People are always confused into it.
Yeah, one second, I'm just going through it. No, there aren't any questions as of
They
now.
aren't confused. I hope people are getting into this. Say,
Yeah.
I hope you must have heard about pre-code camp. Everyone must have does because it's a YouTube site as well as the big blogging site for the programmer. And it is written here that adding JavaScript quiz question and written good first question and JavaScript. And this is what we have looked for, good first issue and the JavaScript. So let us get into it. I've just opened this thing. And the user or the publisher, what we can say, participant is also listed over here for this market. Says that there's certain sort of question, 600 questions for JavaScript itself. So we are publishing sort of quiz panel for it. And they are saying that these are the criteria of pushing the code or the creating the questions for the quizzes, which is into the open source. And these questions will be published over the internet to let the people solve while looking for any practice question or the handbook like key for teachers or the free code camp does. So this is here we have here for free code camp and let us see how what we can do. I just want to add some sort of question for JavaScript. Okay. Is it written over here? You can I open this site because it's written over here. Let us see what happens over here. Like some sort of magic. And here we see that hey, fullquiz.js, and here we see that data is being passed to JSON, and we see a lot of questions regarding JS, like JavaScript, and these questions are surely published on the website by solving the quiz or when from where the winner is allocated. So what I want to do is I'll go into this repository and the full path is given over here. See clearly, let me zoom in. Developer side src data fullfill.js, and this file contain these questions. So we have to add some sort of text or questions into it. This is a major concern. Okay. So what we can do is, first of all, we are forking into it. Forget like why we are forking a clone or copy into it, like why Tocket is doing into this. Like, forget about it. I'll cover all these things into a new session, Git and GitHub. So do not worry about what I put. But having all these things. So wait. Yeah, guys, I have already cloned it or not. Yeah. So what you can say is the time I press the button fork, it got into my repository. But earlier you can see that it was from the free code camp developer quiz site. Developer quiz site. It was a repository of free code camp. Now it is a repository of Toki Remote 5201, which is of mine. Okay. Of course, it's from mine, and I can do a lot of things into it. Like in fact, I can delete all these things and demolish the factors which they are going on. So what I'll do is copy this thing. Just forget like what Pocket is doing. Like that's a different value session. So don't be worry about it. Like what is Git Bash, like what is Git and GitHub. That is a very separate topic, and I'll cover these things in a new webinar, new workshop. You must be thinking that what Pocket is starting right now, Git clone, writing all these things. That's a major factor. You won't have to do it. Don't worry about it. The main focus is to contribute into open source, making you people are open source contributors. So I have downloaded this file. If you remember, so what was the object file? It was the src data and the full quiz.js. I'll open this file, open with code. That's a JavaScript file. If you are very aware of JavaScript, you can do a lot of things into it. And you have seen a lot of questions to it. And I do want to add a question of mine regarding JavaScript. Vidushi, do you have some sort of question like what else can be done into it or any funny question?
Uh, so we need a question for JavaScript, right?
Yeah,
So it has to relate to something around JavaScript. So like, for example, what are objects, or like how do you map or something? I think something basic. What type of language is JavaScript? Is it object
it's true.
oriented or
What type of language the JavaScript is?
yeah?
Okay, I'll create this thing.
So We could have high level language or assembly level language.
Yes. So I'll answer this question as the scripting language.
The I think it'll be a object based language.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mean object oriented?
No, only object based. Object. It's not object
Object based.
oriented, I think. Yeah.
Object based language. The answer is given. And some distractor for it. I'll give the answer as
Object oriented or assembly language or high
basic
language.
programming,
Yeah.
assembly language. It is microprocessor language. Certain a microprocessor itself. And and the explanation should be given as of the rule. But JavaScript is a object-based language. And as of the rule, we have to give some sort of a recluse of pre-code camp itself. So JavaScript pre-code camp will give the link of the basic one, what is JavaScript, and that clears the most of the thing, right? What is JavaScript? Because everyone has to give the link of pre-code camp itself. The time I saved the repository, it's on the master plans. Okay. Isn't it working? Let me clear the thing. This second first, and I get this close. It was a file about editing, and let the git know like what happened. So we were, and you see number one over here, like it says that yes, okay, you have edited something into the source control of the git. Like it is not on the internet, but your computer has. Which saying it is not good. I'll say it is good, and it's saying that it's not good. So I'll say that listen to me, Git. I'm adding this thing into the Git repository, and I shall be publishing on the repository of pre-code camp. There it will be checked out and published into the main repository. Do not think like what okay this thing like repository and all these heavy words. Don't worry about that. That's a separate topic which will be covered in Git and GitHub. So don't worry about that. Just listen to me carefully. If you come across this thing, you see that there is a main branch. We are on the main branch and we have to shift into another branch. That's another thing. It will be covered in Git and GitHub. Don't worry about that. I'll get into question. Yeah. So I have written this thing. Okay, slash question JavaScript, which tells about the author of pre-code camp repository that Tokir has published this thing naming the question of JavaScript. So from which they can understand that Tokir is the person or the contributor into it and want to contribute the question of JavaScript into their repository. You can see a magic over here. Tokir question JavaScript. This thing has been changed. Cool. I do want to commit or add these things into the staging area. Git add out. That means adding all the things. You must be thinking that what happened, like what all these things, like it ad and all that staging area, but all these things are being done. So don't worry about that. That's a separate topic. I'm submitting all these things which are into the staging area as adding question JavaScript. Well, you can see a magic over here. The one which was over here is not being published. Like it's not visible over here. Like what happened? That thing has been submitted out and ready to get published. Well, push it over the code. So it has been pushed over my repository. Understand the word my repository. Well, you can see that free code camp developer side quiz has a request which says that Tokir Ahmed has a pull request for the same. I'll create a pull request for it. It says that Tokir Ahmed developer quiz site, which the repository which I have cloned earlier has a branch name Tokir question JavaScript has a branch, and that thing the question should be merged into base repository of the main itself. The base repository is the free code camp, which is the author, which is the real boss, and the branch which are we are merging into is the main branch because we do want that our questions should be published over the website or the repository. That's the certain thing. You can type the commit message, but you haven't given. It's up to you. Doesn't matter at all. Remember, these things are the certain prerequisites of open source. So do check out all these things and listen it carefully. I'm typing a commit. I am talking beginner in JavaScript and do want to add to so contribute into JavaScript repo. So, certainly creating a pull request for it. So if you get into the repository or the free code camp, you see that hey, Taqir Ahmed has added a JavaScript question into the repository of free code camp has created a pull request. Has not added yet, but has created a pull request so that we can judge into it, have a look into it, have an insight for it, and see that yeah, question is valuable, the resource is pure, and we can add this thing into our main website or the main repository, and my question will be published over the internet. They'll get into it, see, hey, Docker has done this, and boom. So that's all for the basic open source contribution. Well, you can say that you have contributed into the open source and have an insight for it. So Vidushi, do you have some sort of words or like you want to say something over here?
Yeah, I think this was quite insightful, and I mean, you successfully did a contribution here and showed everyone how to do it. So that's great. If any of you have any doubts, you can let us know right now. If not, you can connect with us on LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever you feel like, and you can let us know there. And so that was about open source in a holistic view. And there are multiple organizations. For example, I'm myself working with DevRel and AppSmith, and it's an open source organization. You can use their product to do your school projects very easily because you don't need to think about your front end. Front end gets managed at AppSmith, and then the back end is what you need to do about. and it's very, very easy. It's like a low code platform. It's all built in public. So that's again what are the benefits of an open source organization. So if you do not have any other queries, we would be thankful for you to be able like join this session, and it was great hosting you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. And yes, well, we can have sort of screenshots also if they can open their camera and have a particular shot